Interception. Spoiler alert. All right. Ryan Thomas here live on the Thomas Take Sports podcast. Of course, all set, raring to go. A little later than I wanted to be. I will say that had a little bit of a technical difficulty to start the show, but I was able to work past it. Was able to get my mug right here for another episode of the Thomas Take Sports podcast. I greatly appreciate everybody tuning in from the Buffalo fan base to my social media at Ryan Thomas Take on the bottom left hand corner. My name is Ryan Thomas. Of course, I've been in this game for about 10 years now, podcasting regularly, covering the Buffalo Bills. Shout out to Mom for this awesome sweatshirt. Be good, do good. God bless, and go Bills. Josh Allen. And of course, it's the MVP's birthday today. So shout out 29 years young, Josh Allen. God willing, fingers crossed that guy plays for another 10 years. Let's shoot for that. Let's shoot for that. Let's definitely shoot for that. 10 years I think is fair. Um, but of course, tonight's episode live, Thomas Take Sports Podcast, is available live every Wednesday at 8 Eastern Time on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network and on all TTSP platforms where you find your podcasts. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, of course, YouTube. You could subscribe to the fan base. You could subscribe to myself. And of course, that is the Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Post a lot of additional content, I'd say, not just Buffalo Bills oriented, but fantasy football oriented, as well as NFL league news. We did just get some sad news across the ticker here in the National Football League. Jim Irsay has passed away, the Colts owner. Jim Irsay passed away at the age of 65. Very sad and sudden news to hear that. I wanted to send my condolences to the Irsay family. I wanted to send my condolences to the entire Indianapolis Colts organization, as this was a man that was a dedicated owner. I think the style in which each one of these men and women own teams can be very, very different from one another. But Jim Irsay was a guy that simply loved football, loved the Colts, and wanted to do what he thought was best for the Colts. I will go back to a moment in which Jim Irsay spoke to the media with Peyton Manning when they decided to let him go, release him for the you know, neck issues and stuff that he had. And he cried. He cried. Real tears. And it was very emotional. And I said to myself, you know what? That's a guy that, maybe, he doesn't do everything perfect. There were a lot of things that, Colts fans didn't like that he did, or didn't like the way he presented himself sometimes. But he really cared about the fans. He really cared about the team. And he wanted the Colts to be, a solid organization. And he turned them into that. He was a big reason why the Colts were able to be the successful juggernaut that they were for the better part of a decade and a half, if not 2 decades, from the Colts Peyton Manning era to the Andrew Luck era, and owned the team since 1997. It was the greatest era in the franchise's history by far, and he was a big part of that. So, whether he was the biggest part of that, Peyton Manning gets a lot of credit, Tony Dungy, all those guys, Dallas Clark, Edgar and James. There were a lot of great players, Bob Sanders, Dwight Freeney. But I thought it was cool that Jim Irsay kind of always stood on his own grounds. I will say that. I respect anybody that, stands up for what they believe in. But wanted to touch on that tonight on this show, sponsored by 26shirts.com. For all of your Buffalo Bills apparel needs, go to 26shirts.com. You'll find yourself a great item. Now, this is a really fun show tonight because while I say happy birthday to Josh Allen, somber note, Jim Irsay passes away, but I will say that I got some great news earlier this afternoon that the Buffalo Bills will be on HBO Hard Knocks, which I am so excited for this. Um, HBO Hard Knocks is one of my favorite shows. It's every single year. It is binge-worthy television, even though you can't necessarily binge it in the way that you used to be able to. It's on one day a week. You're able to watch it that day, whichever day it's on. I think last season was on Sundays during the off season, or maybe Friday night, something like that. So whatever, I have loved every single season. Somebody asked me recently whether I thought this could happen. I thought it could. You got the NFL MVP. You got Sean McDermott, who's a very likable guy. Brandon Beane, he's been on a lot of podcasts. He's done a lot of awesome work that I think has been really credited by a lot of people. Maybe not Jeremy White and Sneaky Joe, but that was an interesting start to the week a few weeks back. But joking aside, a lot of people respect Brandon Beane and his process, and even those guys, I would say, too, do as well. I would hope so. But this is a very marketable team now. We're talking about a much different day and age from what it was, let's just say 15, 20 years ago. The drought years plagued this team. There were a lot of years where we wondered if this team would move to Toronto. I actually have gone back into a little bit of the memory bank, and I wanted to go back to like 2003. Buffalo Bills draft Willis McGahee. 2007, Buffalo Bills draft Marshawn Lynch. 2011, I believe, Buffalo Bills draft C.J. Spiller, or 10 maybe it was. So in each one of those drafts, not only did they take a running back in the first round, but it kind of showed where the franchise was at those times. Willis McGahee was drafted largely because Tom Donahoe thought he was the second or third best player in that draft. Coming off of an ACL injury. Prior to that ACL injury, he was definitely one of the best players in the nation by far. But he was going to be on ice for his first season. And he was on ice his first season. Travis Henry toted the rock, and then Henry was gone. Willis McGahee was the man. He got the touches, but then he wanted out. Talked about Buffalo moving to Toronto. It was a very tumultuous time. Marshawn Lynch was embraced, I think, by the Bills Mafia. Some off-the-field stuff led to Marshawn Lynch, being traded away to Seattle, where he went on to have a Hall of Fame caliber career, I would say. And then, obviously, C.J. Spiller brought in to kind of replace Marshawn Lynch prior to the Bills even trading Lynch away. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it showed in those moments how tumultuous things were really here. Regime changes every 3-4 years, coaching changes every 3-4 years. It was very hard to maintain a level of adequacy in terms of organizational function without that consistency. And I think a lot of fans right now that are naysayers or detractors of the Buffalo Bills would say, well, maybe they've brought back the same old pickers many a year too many times, you know what I mean? In terms of guys like Jordan Poyer, people thought he could have, been gone a year sooner. People are talking about Sean McDermott every single season. There's always a portion of the year where it seems like everybody wants him fired. And then obviously now that you got Mick Bean, Brandon Beane, and Sean McDermott as a package deal, I think any team that's been able to show relatively any success in the National Football League has been able to show that success due to that bond that the head coach and the GM have. I'll go back to Marv Levy and Bill Polian. They were in lockstep unison in terms of their evaluation process, in terms of the players, the types of players that they wanted to bring in. What stone was left unturned during that era? Steve Tasker was a waiver claim. Steve Christie was a waiver claim. So there's a lot of tidbits to the knowledge base of those two gentlemen that helped build the Bills into what was a 2-14 team to eventually being in the AFC Championship and 4 straight Super Bowls. So a lot to take in from this. It is a moment where, the Bills are on Hard Knocks. This is the biggest show in off-season coverage. This trumps ESPN coverage of anything. This trumps NFL Network's coverage of anything. This trumps any social media coverage that anybody could provide. What Hard Knocks is able to do as a vehicle for that franchise, within a franchise, right? It is a franchise show. It's been around a long time. I can go back to the New York Jets with Rex Ryan. I could go back to the Detroit Lions with Dan Campbell. You really get a great sense of, if you don't know a coach, you'll definitely know what he is and what he's about. If you feel like you don't quite know Terry Pagula as well as you wish you did, you're definitely going to get a look behind the curtain in terms of who Terry Pagula is, and everything that he's represented to this community since purchasing both the Sabres and the Buffalo Bills. A lot of fans can look at that and say that they wish that, he's put the Sabres in a better position, but he's put the Bills in a really great position since taking over the team. A lot of that had to do with the hiring decision of Sean McDermott, who then was able to bring in Brandon Beane, who was his buddy from Carolina. So, I'm really pumped about this. I think that this is great news for the fan base, for the fam base as well, to be able to cover this week to week to week. I'm going to recap each episode as I've done on my podcast previously with other teams on this show. I love this show so much and what it's able to do for the franchises that are consistently a part of it. Cleveland Browns did a season. New York Jets did a season a few years ago with Aaron Rodgers. The Chicago Bears were the team last year. And to me, the Hard Knocks show is better when it's the training camp edition. When it's the in-season edition, yeah, there's a lot of tape and stuff that can be rolled, but training camp, man, you really find out what these players are made of. It is the dog days of summer for a reason. So I'm definitely excited to take this in and enjoy it, because it's a very interesting time to be a Bills fan. It's big time right now being a Bills fan. So I want to talk about some players that are under pressure as well a little bit, players under the microscope. And I want to acknowledge, some of these players that I have full faith in. I looked at the Bills' schedule last week for the schedule release show. I feel very confident in this team. Number one, I feel very confident in the fact that they have one of the easiest schedules in all of football, right? And it comes down to playing the same teams that they've played the last X amount of years in the AFCs twice a year. I do think the New England Patriots will be much, much better than what they have been. It all comes down to coaching in this league. Mike Vrabel, solid coach, right? He's not a coach that I have ever really liked per se, but it's because we've always had to play against him. He's not coaching the Bills. If he coached my team, I think I'd have a newfound, bit of respect for Mike Vrabel and what he's been able to accomplish. Definitely got to respect that, right? But in terms of what he's going to be able to do with the Patriots, I think it was a great hire for the Patriots for obvious reasons. Former Patriot himself, proven track record. He's done a lot of really solid things in this league, and I thought that the Patriots should have honestly hired him last year, to be quite fair, but they did not. They went with Gerard Mayo, and he was one and done. But AFC East Jets, I don't know what to think. I don't know if I should feel any sense of fear over what the Jets bring. They're going to be a much different team with Justin Fields as opposed to Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Glenn is going to run a very different type of ship. But do they scare me? No. Miami Dolphins. I mean, the Miami Dolphins, I think, have shown the league what they are and why they are what they are. It's pretty obvious. Tua is only going to get them so far if he can't stay healthy. Mike McDaniel can't get these guys right in the cold months, November, December. His record's pretty abysmal as a head coach in this league in those months. So I just don't have high expectations. I think the Bills will win the AFC East easily. Once again, sixth straight season. But like I said, I want to talk about some players that I think are under a lot of pressure heading into their second season. So this is under pressure. My Dalton Kincaid assessment. Now, I've had a lot of Bills fans, give me their take on Dalton Kincaid and try to get my take on Dalton Kincaid. And I'll go back to when the Bills drafted him 3 years ago. I looked at Dalton Kincaid. This is going into his third season. I looked at Dalton Kincaid as a investment in the offense, trying to run the offense in a different form or fashion with Ken Dorsey with two tight end sets. But Dalton Kincaid has never really been able to run in this offense that way. They've lined him up out wide. They've lined him up on the inside as a kind of slot inside as a slot tight end. They have not really put him on the line of scrimmage to block as much as they had, let's just say, an Alec Anderson in jumbo sets, or a Zach Davidson, or a Quentin Morris, who is now, moved on to another franchise. I believe the Jacksonville Jaguars, if my memory serves me right. But this is a big year for Dalton Kincaid. This is a year that Dalton Kincaid has to show that he's one of the better pass catching tight ends in the league. Third year in the NFL, he has to stay healthy. That's the first and foremost, gripe or critique that I have of Dalton Kincaid. I won't lie to you. Right now, I'm in this dynasty league that I've been commissioning for my podcast. I'll have a live draft show August 17th at 7 o'clock. So tune into that. A little bit of preview there in the next few months. But we've had a live draft show every year. Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel. And it's been great. It's allowed people to learn fantasy football, learn dynasty football, also promote the guys that have been supporting my podcast, as well as some good buddies of mine, as well as my dad. He's in this league as well, which is really cool. And I've debated whether I should or should not trade for Dalton Kincaid. That's something that's come up these last few days. I was out on the golf course with a buddy of mine, Zach, and he's got Dalton Kincaid, and he knows I love me some Dalton Kincaid. I love the talent. I love the intangibles. I love what he's capable of. But he just hasn't shown it yet in the form of fashion that I thought he would, which has led me to kind of pump the brakes, a little bit on this trade. But I think that this year will be a bounce back year for him, because last year he was hurt. His rookie year was excellent. His rookie year could not have gone really any better post the firing of Ken Dorsey. He did a lot of really good things last season. But I also feel like he's got to be able to, bounce back and make that next step towards being a big time playmaker in this league. So he would be my first player that's under pressure heading into 25. And it's no coincidence that he's on the offensive side of the football. I will stay there because I think a lot of fans right now are looking at the team and they're saying they do need that quote unquote wide receiver one. I think Josh Allen proved last year to statistically, as well as just career accomplishments, MVP aside, that, the whole wide receiver one notion is just not necessarily reality of how teams win football games. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, they do have A.J. Brown, but they use a lot of different pieces to effectively use A.J. Brown. I would go to the Kansas City Chiefs. They've won Super Bowls without Tyreek Hill, right? They won more without him than they did with him. So that right there, I think, proves a lot. And you can't compare apples to oranges. They're two different teams, ran two completely different ways, two very different coaches. But I think the thought process around Josh Allen is to get as many young pieces around him as possible, to make him have to do less. And I think Ray Davis helped with that last year as a rookie. I think there were a lot of moments where Keon Coleman did a lot of things that were very great in his rookie season, showing some glimpses of why he was a sought after, high second round pick in the National Football League's NFL draft last year, as well as by the Buffalo Bills. I wrote an article. I've referenced it a few times. It's about the 2024 wide receiver draft class. I hold the opinion that it could go down in history as the best wide receiver draft class of all time. Now, I know what that means. I'm talking forever, right? I don't see another wide receiver draft class being as great as that one. But I'll tell you this. Have I been proven wrong yet? I mean, I'm 1 year in and I'm looking pretty good. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. was a stud. Lad McConkey was a stud. Ricky Pearsall got shot and he came back and played really well. I mean, jokes aside, for something that was as horrible as that, he played his tail off in the moments that he got the opportunity to. And Keon Coleman, I felt like, did the same. There were a lot of moments where you say, okay, that's the guy that they went out and got. That's the guy that I want to see. But there were also moments where, yeah, he got hurt and he wasn't playing healthy. And he had a hard time coming back from the injury that he suffered. Does that mean he's a bust, as I've seen some people label him? I don't think so. I don't think so. So it's a scenario that year two, we're going to say that this guy should be written off, that this guy is not good enough, that this guy needs to, you know, hit the road. I mean, I've seen a lot of Keon Coleman hate, and I think it's ridiculous. I really do. I think that it's a real, um, kind of joke that this is the case, that people are talking about him as if he is a bust. That to me is just not fair. So I talked about under pressure. I'm going to talk about diamond in the rough, Ray Davis. So last year I was talking about running backs all draft long. This draft, I'm talking about Ashton Gente almost every single day leading up to the draft, as well as Omarion Hampton, as well as Trayvon Henderson, as well as Quinshon Judkins, and a couple others. But Ray Davis last year was a gem for me that I wanted the Bills to take. And fourth round wheels around, and the Buffalo Bills take Ray Davis. And you go back and you look at the season that James Cook had, and James Cook had a banner career year, pillar to post, right? There's no debating that. James Cook showed up and showed out, right? But I will say that Ray Davis did some really great things too. As a rookie, 600 yards, ran for 158 total yards in relief of James Cook, actually subbing in for James Cook. I love Ray Davis. I look at Ray Davis and Ty Johnson as the best running back 2 and 3 probably that the league's got to offer. James Cook being a top 5 back in his own right, trying to prove that he's worth the money that he wants. That is good. That's good. As long as he's playing for the Bills, trying to prove that he's worth the money that he's asking for, he's going to play his ass off. And Ray Davis is going to spell him really well, and Ty Johnson's going to be the pass-catching back that we all know and love him to be. I could not be more confident in the Bills running back situation, and I think Ray Davis is actually a big part of that, much bigger part of that than what he's given credit for. So going to, the big questions and moments of this team, I do believe that the Bills defense has the potential to be very, very good this season. I would say different, dare I say different in 2025. Different in the sense of, I think Sean McDermott is more confident in who is running the defense, Bobby Babich, than he was in Leslie Frazier. Despite Leslie Frazier being here for X amount of years, I think each year that Leslie Frazier was here, the years of confidence dwindled. The days of confidence dwindled down each year. And Sean McDermott took the play calling over himself, felt like he needed to right the ship a little bit of this defense. Bobby Babich calls the plays last year. Many teachable moments for Bobby Babich last year as the D coordinator. I'm sure he learned quite a lot as the D coordinator in his first season, calling the defensive plays. I think he was salivating at the opportunity to kind of have a say in the draft of, hey, these are some of the guys that I do need and that I do think will benefit this defense. And Brandon Beat entered the draft, and he said, you know what? I got to take what's, deep in this draft. If it's a need or not, I need to add to our strengths. I love that. I love that a lot. Now, adding to the D line was a big part of that. And when you recruit, draft, sign any defensive lineman, you don't need just one good one. Bruce Smith gets a lot of love, and he was great, but there were other guys on that defense that were really great too, that do not get a lot of love and affection. I liked Daryl Talley. He wasn't a defensive lineman, but he was a great linebacker. Cornelius Bennett, Shane Conlon, those were stud linebackers standing behind him. Uh, Great coverage skills, buying him time to get to the quarterback, right? And great ability to stuff the run, gap integrity linebackers all day long. So there's a lot of factors to this defense that I like. And I think that a lot of the players that they have had to the players that they've brought in are actually going to complement one another in a form and fashion that I don't think we've seen really since the days of Bruce Smith and Daryl Talley and those guys that I've mentioned, but really since the days that are way further back than what I realized. The cold front, Mario Williams, Kyle Williams, Marcel Darius, Jerry Hughes, that was a front four in the modern-esque era of the NFL. That was a fun front four. They could do a lot with that front four. Guys could plug the middle, and Darius and Kyle, one of the more premier pass rushers of his era, Mario Williams, Jerry Hughes, TCU, Bullfrog doing his thing, right? Or Horned Frog doing his thing. So there were a lot of awesome pieces, and I think that that's what I'm starting to see here. Swiss Army knife caliber defense, different in 2025 in comparison to 2024, and definitely different in terms of the secondary. Now, touching on the secondary, I know that there's a lot of fans out there that love Damar Hamlin. We love that guy, right? We love Damar Hamlin, number 3, for all of the right reasons. But then there's some fans that wish the Bills would have moved on from Damar Hamlin. They feel like he's not the player that should be manning the back end of our secondary. I don't know if he will be. I like Cole Bishop. I think Cole Bishop has a lot of room to improve, right? A lot of room to improve. But I think that the room to improve is there. The skills are there to meet the room for improvement. And I also think Taylor Rapp, him staying healthy, big part of things, right? But also some of these late round picks, the Strongs, the Hancocks, what can they bring? What can Derek Forrest bring as a late, addition to this team, or an early addition to this team in the free agency period? So there's a lot of moves that have been made that are on the emphasis of competition. They're on the emphasis of a little bit of a chip on your shoulder there on that defensive side of the ball. I honestly feel like this defense has the potential to be better than it's been in a long time. And that's, not knocking the guys that we had in their prime. Trey White's back, not necessarily in his prime. He knows that. You know that. I know that. But he's back, and he's a big piece and a big part of what's going to help Maxwell Hairston get to the level that he needs to. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, the two best safeties in Bills history, in my opinion. I can't think of many better. I wish we had those two guys in their prime on this defense. I think that would make the defense even more different, to say the least. But it's a great opportunity that this team has with a bullseye on their back. Don't get it twisted. This team's going to have a lot of pressure on it coming from where it came from. MVP quarterback, looked at as maybe the next guy to win a ring, this first ring. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I hope and pray that Josh Allen can enter his age 29 season. Happy birthday to Josh Allen again, with an opportunity to win his first Super Bowl. I feel like, and maybe I'm nuts, but I feel like there's no team that we shouldn't beat. I feel like we should beat every single team. I feel like we could beat every single team. If we performed at our best, we could win the entire year. And it's not going to happen. It's really hard to do that. It is. It's really hard to do that. Patriots couldn't even pull it off. Last team to pull it off, 72 Miami Dolphins, I believe. So it's going to be really tough, but I'm confident. That's what I'm saying. I'm confident in this team, confident in this coaching staff, confident in this GM. and the team that he's built. Thus far, we haven't been able to get it. We've been really, really close, but I feel like they have the opportunity to really shut up a lot of haters and a lot of doubters once again that doubted whether they'd win the division last year. They did that. They made it to the AFC Championship game for the second time, by the way, in 5 years. So hopefully it doesn't take 5 years to get to the next one. We need it to be this year. We need to get right back into the AFC title game against Kansas City or not. I don't give a damn. Win that, go to the Super Bowl, and win the Super Bowl. So with that being said, hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I'm Ryan Thomas. Of course, as the sweatshirt says, be good, do good, God bless, and go Bills. Happy birthday, Josh Allen. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday night at 8 for some fantasy football 2025 rankings right here on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast live on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network.